So the main thing is that you gotta calm down on defense. Just take it easy. You don't always gotta rip an option. That is the thing about this game. You have life, you have health. Here, look at it. Let's look at it together.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
You have all this health, and now you've essentially given your opponent, number one, the opportunity to get their flame stocks, which we want to deny as often as possible, if possible, right? And number two, you lost like a good chunk of health. All we gotta do is block, okay? Sometimes it's okay to block, all right? You don't always gotta rip an option. Ripping options leads to demise. By doing this, we essentially allow ourselves the room and the space to punish decision making like walk back, like neutral jump. It gives us the room to do that. But if we rip an option every time, we're not giving that space. We are going to be looking over Luke today versus the new character Mai. We have a couple things to go over. Make sure that we learn from this experience, and if you like the content, feel free to subscribe. So off of this instance, you gotta realize that she's -10. Okay, so what does -10 mean? -10 means that you have one of two options or one of three options in this instance, right? Option number one is to go for immediately for the crouching heavy punch, right? And then go for a route, and then go for something like that, right? Force them into a situation where they have to guess and whatever have you, right? The other option is that the safer option is that you can go for a crouching medium punch, because if you're never sure, the crouching medium punch won't make you fail. If we're being honest, this option never fails, so going for this option is never a bad option. Now, number three is going for the smarter option, and that is back throw. Now, why do we want to back throw here? Is because once we notice that we're a little bit closer to the corner, we can force that sort of guessing game upon them and force them to guess. And if we can force them to guess, it's a lot more uncomfortable when they're here than if we do our full combo here and then bring them full screen. So when going for offensive options, like you went for a good DP, you got that anti-air DP, it was beautiful, you did your thing, cool. Now, what you did here is a little bit less optimal than going for what I'm going to suggest. Now, what you went for was crouching medium punch into drive rush. So if they blocked, it would be a guess situation. But my offer to you is, instead of immediately going for an option where you're going for a crouching medium kick drive rush right into a guess situation, why don't we just start there, right? Why don't we start there by using less drive gauge? If we start there instead of going for another option, then we can essentially force a guess on them that is a lot easier to manage, right? By doing this, it makes it a lot harder. So what I'm doing in this instance is there are one of three things that you can do off of this instance once you lock them down, right? You can go for drive rush, raw drive rush, crouch medium kick into crouch jabs, right, to get the route, and then you can go for overhead off of this instance, right? You can either go for that, we can go for a crouch jab. The crouch jab will essentially allow you to be plus in their face. If they try to tech, then we can blow it up, but we're using a lot less drive gauge in order to do it, right? We can go for that option, or if we're feeling a little frisky, we can also go for the overhead option. One thing to note is that if you go for the overhead option off of that specific ender or off of DP this close, you're liable to get thrown in this instance. And the last option that I wanted to mention is using throw, right? So you have access to overhead, you have access to low, and then you have access to throw. These are the options that I want you to use. Now, instead of going for a crouching medium punch into drive rush, because you're not necessarily paying attention to how much drive meter you have, because this is very close to burning out. And we don't want to do that on a consistent basis. So if you clicked on this video, I'm sure you need some help. Lord knows I did at some point. But here's the thing, you want your favorite content creators to come and help you. But let's be real, they're charging like $60 per hour. You don't need that. But when I got you good. Over on this channel, I do free coaching sessions on Tuesdays and on Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. EST. So what does that look like? I essentially go over your matches. I give you tools so that you can succeed the next time you open up rank. So once again, join my Discord. Wait till I'm live either on Tuesdays or on Thursdays 6:30 p.m. EST. Be there or be square. Back to the video. So off of this setup, right, we see that setup a lot of Luke players use it. It's a beautiful thing to use. It is what it is. Now here's the thing, you go for crouch and medium punch immediately afterwards, right? And in this instance, you go for crouch and medium punch into standing heavy punch, right? Doesn't necessarily net you anything. Now if you're unsure, what you can do is that you can go for crouch and medium twice, right? That is a decent option, right? That's a decent option. You can go for that. The option that I suggest to you is going for the crouch jab. Reason being is because after you go for this, you're plus on block, right? If you happen to hit your opponents, you will get the combo off of your crouch jab anyway, like so, right? If you're wrong and they block, you still get pressure, as in you go for crouch medium punch, then into crouch jab if they try to mash off the crouching medium punch, right? It's giving you a bunch of options that you now have available to you, and it also allows you to hit confirm a little bit better, aside from going for this type of sort of option in which you get blown up for going for it. Keeps things a lot simpler, and then once again you can put yourself in that situation where you make them guess, and so on and so forth. So a similar thing can be said off of this interaction right here where you went for the neutral jump. Now the reason why I would say going for crouch jab here would allow you to get that pressure that you're looking for. So after you jump here, you go for your jumping heavy punch. If you're confident that you'll finish, then you can go for an option that will allow you to finish the game, right? If you're confident that you'll get it. But if you're not confident, sometimes going for a route like this where you come down with the normal and then you go into something else, right? And some people, the pros, will actually probably do something like this, a route like that. Now the reason why that route works is namely because I'm doing the exact same thing that I mentioned earlier, that being following with a jab, but after the jab, after I recognize that the jab hit, right, I'm following it up into another drive rush and killing the opponent that way. So instead of following with the button and immediately going for a sweep, let's change up the pressure and then go for something like that. Okay, now if you're not sure on whether you've hit or not, then you can simply stop, and that is something that people don't do enough, is simply just stop. You need to learn to stop. Sometimes going for pressure isn't all it's worth to be, because when you start trying to go all the time, you end up finding yourself in a lot of more situations where your opponent mashes on you and then you feel uncomfortable because you're like, bro, this guy's just mashing, right? We don't want that. So let's talk about this. You get EXDP'd here. Cool. Now you're in a situation you gotta guess. It be what it be. It is part of the game. I don't know why people play fighting games don't like to guess. But anyways, off of this situation, you're uncomfortable. We understand. So what do we decide to do? We rip a DP. Wrong! That is not the correct answer. When in this case, what we should be doing is looking at the board. I will always say this, because looking at the board can dictate the decisions you make. So we look at how much health we have left. Actually, I'm gonna choose pink. We look at how much health we have left here. In this instance, if your opponent goes for a throw, off of this instance, you only die if you get punish countered. I'm trying not to punish counter you. Right? You don't die. You have one more guess until you die. Plus, if you get pushed out here, then they probably have to use an option like this to kill you. But either way, it's not the end of the world, and there's still an opportunity for you to win. But the moment that you decide to rip this, you just lose the game. Right? No matter what route they decide to choose, like, you just die. And it sucks. To be honest, it just sucks. So instead of leveraging your health here, you decide to let it rip. So moving forward, what I want you to do is just look at your health bar, look at the drive gauge, look at the decisions that your opponent is more likely to make because of their drive gauge, because of their health. Because their health is so low and one EXDP can kill them, they might be inclined to play a little bit more conservative. And if they're willing to play conservative, that's when we can take advantage of it. How do we take advantage of it? It's simply by going for an option that doesn't blow us up, right? We can go for that. We can go for just simply blocking out the situation. We could also go for a delayed crouching medium kick, which I'll talk more about a little later. So let's talk about this situation right here. We need to learn how to deal with big buttons. Now, big buttons are obviously going to be a part of this game, and they're going to be something that you have to deal with on a consistent basis, right? For you're going to be dealing with a lot of standing heavy punch and standing heavy kick. These are very annoying buttons to deal with. However, we have to learn how to manage them. Now, with bigger buttons also comes a bigger opportunities to punish, right? So if they decide to keep using bigger buttons, you find yourself in that type of situation where if you know that they're going for an option that can get blown up, you can definitely do it, right? If they decide to only whiff once, in this case they whiff twice, but if they only whiff once, we want to learn how to take advantage of this. Now, I'm going to suggest the very basics of whiff punishing, and that is using sweep. Now, why do I suggest sweep in particular? I suggest sweep because it covers a fairly long range, and it can help you a lot when trying to punish larger buttons, because punishing larger buttons with your medium buttons tend to require a little bit more skill with spacing and everything like that. With sweep, pretty much if you're in relative range, you'll hit, right? So I suggest the very basics of whiff punishing, we're going to use sweep. So now that we have that in order, how do we go about this? So we're going to walk into spaces in which they think that pressing that normal is okay, right? If they think that pressing that normal is okay in that range, that's when we'll press it. We'll look for movement. Once we notice that they're going for a button like that, we'll look for movement, look for something to whiff punish, and then we'll press it. Right? Sometimes you're not going to always be right. Sometimes you're going to be a little bit slow. But the key behind this normal is that it essentially allows you to go ahead and do it. Right? At least from a very basic perspective. On top of which, because you're getting a punish counter, that means it gives you more than enough time to do whatever route that you wanted to do in that instance. And then you can go for your pressure from there. Okay, one thing I need you to do a little bit more often is pull up. You're too afraid. Pull up. Pull up. It's okay to pull up. Okay? It's okay to pull up on your opponent. Pull up. Make them guess. It's okay. The moment we make them guess, the more they're gonna get uncomfortable. Right? We get a successful DP here. We should be looking for an opportunity to pull up. Right? We should be looking for things to take advantage of. If we're not taking advantage of this and we're only looking for opportunities to like whiff punish, even though we're not whiff punishing that well, we're essentially doing ourselves a disservice. So don't be afraid to pull up. You can decide to do, we're gonna slide in a couple of anti-my strats here, right? Sometimes what you'll want to do is something like that. Now, why do we want to go for an option like this? Is because if we notice that our opponent is trying to pull up and immediately put us into a guessing situation, we want to be a little bit, we want to try and check them for it, right? Light DP is also a decent option as well, right? We want to try and check them for it, right? We're not always going to be in a situation where he chooses the right height, but at the very least, sometimes we want to try and check them for it. If we're able to check them sometimes for the decisions that they're making, right, they're less likely to try and actually mix you, and then they'll just kind of let this ball drop on your head without actually trying to do anything because they're so afraid of the EXDP or the light DP drop that they can punish. So we can take advantage of it. The main thing is that you gotta calm down on defense. Just take it easy. You don't always gotta rip an option. That is the thing about this game. You have life, you have health. Here, look at it. Let's look at it together. You have all this health. And now you've essentially given your opponent, number one, the opportunity to get their flame stocks, which we want to deny as often as possible, if possible, right? And number two, you lost like a good chunk of health, and we don't want to give your opponent a good chunk of your health, especially for no reason, right? We don't want to give them this, because the moment we give them this, like, they go for an easy route like this, and then now you're even more than I thought it did. Right? And now you're struggling. Now you're actually scared because the option that you chose left you in a worse state than you initially thought you were in. Listen, all we gotta do is block, okay? Sometimes it's okay to block, all right? You don't always gotta rip an option. Ripping options leads to demise. Okay, the more we try to do this, the more we're unsuccessful we're gonna be. I get being uncomfortable. I get it all. I understand it. The thing is that we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. All right, that sounds weird, but stay with me. By doing this, we essentially allow ourselves the room and the space to punish decision making like walk back, like neutral jump. It gives us the room to do that. But if we rip an option every time, we're not giving that space. So this is the last end of the phase where we're going for options. We go for attack, we get our drive gauge back. And what do we decide to do? Do we decide to use our EX Fireball to potentially beat out any sort of fan options? No, we go for DI. And then what do we go? We go for DI again. And then we get blown up for it. And that is the exact thing we don't want to be doing, because at this point you're panicked, you're trying to survive, you're trying to do whatever it takes. But the thing is that if you don't have a game plan on how you plan to finish this, then you're essentially just signing yourself up to lose, right? In this case, this is, I love saying this, and it's so true, is that you're not, in this instance, you're playing to survive. You're not playing to win. This is you fighting to survive. You really want to survive. You want to make sure that you stay alive instead of trying to win the game. If we're trying to win the game, our actions look a little bit different, right? Our actions start to look a little bit more reactive, us looking for opportunities to take advantage of what they're doing, right? We want to then win the game from there. But if we don't do these things, then we're simply signing ourselves up for failure simply by ripping DIs the entire time. Now, with that said, I hope that helps. And any questions?